How's it going, guys? So I'm back with another video. So yes, I got tagged by Laura from Manga Hoarder, and this is manga to read in pairs, which I believe started off as a actual book to read in pairs. What do you call them? Pros? I'm not much of a pro at reading books, so yeah, I guess she figured out that I could do some kind of a manga to comic book slash graphic novel sort of a pairing, which I don't know if I can, because usually when I go to comics, I go to comics because I want to read specific stuff, as well as with manga, I go to read specific stories. And there's a kind of a gap between comics and manga sometimes. They're very different mediums, even though they're both graphic mediums. You would think they would overlap a bit, but even in sort of familiar stories, they are very different. I'm gonna give it my best here, but I don't know if I came up with the best examples to pair up. So I'm gonna start with a pair that, funny enough, I actually was reading at the same time. While I was picking up Motofumi Kobayashi's Cat Shit 1. Oh, wait, let me. Cat Shit 1, which of course was dubbed Apocalypse Meow. I was also reading Fury, My War Gone By, both Vietnam stories where Kobayashi likes to get in depth with details. Garth Ennis, on the other hand, he of course is giving us a character-driven story here. Catch It One, I believe, published by SoftBank in one of their military magazines or a gun magazine. I'm not too sure. So it was serialized, very different from other manga. So it caters to military otaku, for those that want backstories on actual combat in Vietnam. He goes through that a lot. He of course also goes into a lot of detail of weapons and gear that were used during Vietnam. Fury was very much about Nick Fury and his struggles with war. Goran Pavlov, who did the art, gives us some great stuff. It's very pulpy, very much what you would expect in a Vietnam story. I think what really connected both titles for me was that if you're reading Nick Fury alone, there are some technical terms that aren't elaborated. Cat Shit 1 was doing a great job of giving me tons of detail. So I was familiar with some of the technical terms that they used. I know Catch It 1 is kind of hard to find. Nonetheless, I mean, if you could pick up My War Gone By, I think it's a great read. So this next pairing was kind of difficult. I don't know if it's much of a pair. And I'm actually gonna go with the creators more than the works, I think, because one of these was very heavily influenced by the other. I'll start with Masamune Shiro's A Ghost in the Shell, or Shiro Masamune, either way. And Giannis Milano Giannis' Old City Blues. If you're familiar with Shiro's art style, it's gonna feel very reminiscent to pick up Old City Blues. And of course, Old City Blues is a very similar story in a way, but like I said, the art style is very heavily influenced. If you're a fan, I guess, much like Milano Giannis would be of Ghost, I mean, I think you'll have a fun time. We all know that Masamune Shiro likes to get very heavy with the political and social stuff in his work. And if you kind of want to avoid that, Old City Blues is pretty much a great option. I mean, this is more of a simpler story. Yes, you have all the sort of criminal political stuff, but he doesn't bog you down with excessive details of like Shiro would. If you've read Ghost in the Shell and you want something very similar, I would say Milano Janis' Old City Blues. And kind of in a similar fashion, but Daniel Warren Johnson's Space Mullet, I think, reminded me a lot of Orion, making the action kind of flow very nicely, which I think in Orion, Shiro does that a lot. The way he makes a movement flow on the page is pretty incredible. So yeah, I think if you're picking up Orion and want kind of a similar but not the same story, they're both sort of sci-fi space operas. I would say Space Mullet. Although I think Warren Johnson is a little bit more influenced when it comes to characters, at least, sort of with Otomo Zakira. He takes a little from here and there, so it gives you a whole lot of differences, but it feels familiar. Does that make sense? This next one might be kind of an even bigger reach, but Ryosuke Tomoe's Museum, and I think Nail Biter by, I can't even remember who did Nail Biter. Williamson and Henderson. Both are criminal mysteries that deal with serial killers. Museum is more of your traditional Eastern style horror crime, and Nail Biter pretty much turns into your typical American horror slasher, I think. It has been a while since I've flipped through Nail Biter. Joshua Williamson did the writing, and Mike Henderson did the art. The art I wasn't the biggest fan of. It basically grew on me, but the story itself was very interesting. For the first arc, I thought it had a very interesting premise of this whole town which breeds serial killers, which is a big jump from just one serial killer in Museum. And if you did not know, Museum is being published digitally by Kodansha, because this one is by Norma Editorial, so it is the Spanish publication of Ryosuke Tomoe's Museum. As similar as they are, considering serial killers, they're very different stories. For the last one, kind of going to be an even bigger leap. If you enjoy Berserk, why don't you check out Headlopper? It's not as serious of a story as Berserk, I think, but this guy just running around lopping heads, I think, is great. Norgal, I can't remember his name exactly. And he carries this little witch head, which is always making fun of him and giving him crap, which I think is kind of the same as what's that little fairy thing in Berserk? Can't remember exactly. Poon or Pun or I don't know. I've just read like 2 volumes of Berserk, so please don't take my word for anything in Berserk. I wasn't the biggest fan of the first 2 volumes, so I haven't gotten more. But I guess if you want to, not a pairing, but an alternative, go check out Headlopper. That's going to do it, I think. I made so many mistakes here that I don't even know what to put. Thank you very much for watching.